A Turkish judge has ordered an expert investigation into a meme that was put online by a doctor in Western Turkey. Now, the doctor compared the current president of Turkey to Gollum, and we have the example for you right here. So it's actually uncanny. It really, really is. Now, of course, right now, Turkey is the type of country that's jailing journalists or critics or anyone that has anything negative to say about Erdogan.
That's Erdogan on the right?
Yeah, the one on the right, not the one on the left.
But that, other than the picture on the bottom, I would never have picked up that that's Erdogan. Like, that doesn't...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, that's him.
Enjoying a drumstick. So this is actually an incredible story because they've been trying to go after this doctor because he simply shared this meme comparing Erdogan to Gollum. That's it. That's all it's about. After no decision could be reached in the fourth hearing of the case, the judge ordered the investigation to be conducted by no less than 5 people, 2 academics, 2 behavioral scientists or psychologists, and an expert on cinema and television productions.
But I want you to understand what they're trying to decide. They're not trying to decide whether the guy should be put in jail for insulting the president. They're trying to decide whether calling him Gollum is an insult. That's why they need the movie expert and the psychologist. They're like, wait, are you positive that Gollum's a bad guy? And the doctor now, I'm sure, afraid for his life, his freedom, etc., is like, no, Gollum's not a bad guy. Right? And no, I didn't mean it that way.
Beloved defender of a very specific item that he cherished.
Yeah,
right.
Cherished it very much.
Right, he cherished the ring the way Erdogan cherishes Turkey.
Now, look, okay, so part of this story is, of course, silly. I mean, Jesus Christ, Gollum, what are we doing, right? The other part of it is deadly serious and incredibly depressing. So I think we're at that point. I think that we've lost democracy in Turkey and don't realize it. So first off, they're imprisoning people for making fun of the president. They're going to give this guy 2 years.
Yeah, what's up?
If they conclude Gollum's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Okay, grant him that. Okay, don't because I don't want this poor doctor in jail, right? But if you were to grant him that in an objective world, et cetera, you're going to put somebody in prison for making fun of the president. What kind of democracy is that, right? So what can you say about the president?
He's already lost his job, the doctor.
Yeah. And then journalists are being imprisoned every day. Right before the election, they imprisoned a number of journalists who had written against Erdogan, what was perceived as criticism against Erdogan. That's not a democracy. No, you don't have the media anymore. And we have tape of Erdogan yelling at the media, and one of the owners of the media organization is crying on the phone saying, I'm so sorry, I'll remove the guy who was critical of you, okay? And after they imprisoned the journalist the week before the election, then the papers come out with blaring headlines in favor of Erdogan. That's not a free press.
No, that's
right. Not a democracy.
Yeah,
See, democracy isn't just you go and vote, although there is enormous questions about that in Turkey as well. So the polling indicated that Erdogan's group party would not win the majority that they wanted, right? All of a sudden, huge swing, and the night before the election, and they win. Now, they had the results immediately, but the computer that would show you the results somehow wasn't working. But they were sure they had them right. They were sure that the polling was completely wrong. And people are having a legitimate conversation about, like, what went wrong with the polling? There's some chance that nothing went wrong with the polling.
Nothing went wrong with the polling. Because again, you're talking about the kind of guy who would jail journalists and would put this doctor in prison for 2 years is the kind of guy who'd fix an election.
I mean, there's funding of ISIS. My God, the other day broke my heart. There's this Kurdish human rights lawyer. They gunned him down in the middle of a press conference. Now, look, I'm not saying Erdogan did that. I have no idea, okay? I'm not saying he ordered people. I'm not saying he winked and nodded. But now it's a country where they gun down human rights lawyers in broad daylight and get away with it. What has it become, right? So at what point do you go, oh no, it was, the saying in English, slowly boiling a frog in boiling water, right? Like you just raise the temperature 1 degree at a time and you don't notice. Next thing you know, you're boiled alive. And that's what's happening to Turkey's democracy. He's taking one thing away at a time, away at a time. Anybody who disagrees with him goes in jail. Anyone who now just makes a joke about him goes to jail. Who won't he send to jail? What kind of democracy is this?
Did Turkey ever really have a true democracy,
Yes.
though?
Absolutely.
No, and okay, but here's the thing. Turkey, I'm specifically talking about the government of Turkey, not the people of Turkey, can't handle even the slightest criticism whatsoever. This isn't a new thing. This has been around for a long time. They banned YouTube because they didn't want anyone to say anything negative about Ataturk, right?
No.
Is that a democracy?
Anna, no. But Anna, you're absolutely right about that. And they're enormously touchy about criticism on a number of issues,
right, and
especially when it comes
full
to
of
ethnic
denial
issues.
when it comes to their own wrongdoings.
Right.
There's no question.
So that's
about that.
always been the case. But that wasn't what they perceived to be against their own people. That was perceived like the Chinese are super angry at the Japanese. Now, China, of course, doesn't have a democracy, but it doesn't have anything to do with the internal workings of China, right? So in this case, the Turks could be super angry and in denial about Kurds, Armenians, Greeks, whatever it might be, right? And there are those laundry lists of issues, unquestionably. But it didn't affect internal stuff. Now they're saying, no. If you're a Turk, you don't really have a voice anymore, right? Let alone if you're a Kurdish citizen of Turkey, right? So there's no free press. Come on, wake up, Turkey, wake up. There's no free press, right? Second of all, look at what they're doing here. I mean, they downed the Russian jet. Now it's clear that they were at fault there. Even Erdogan said, we wish it hadn't happened. For him to admit that means they were totally wrong, let alone the fact that the Americans released the coordinates showing that the Turks were wrong. They shouldn't have downed it. Now the Russians won't go to Turkey. Now they've got to, stop the tourism. They stopped the trade. They stopped all this. I mean, this is madness, man. And then now who would go to Turkey? Like, would I go to Turkey? I don't know. I've been invited to Turkey. Am I willing to go to Turkey? Wouldn't this guy imprison me? Of course he would.
I wouldn't go to Turkey. No.
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, I don't imagine.
So look at the damage he's done to Turkey. That we weren't the Gulf states. The Gulf states, you could get in prison for kissing a girl, for holding hands in the wrong way, for saying something wrong about this guy or the Mohammed or the rulers, etc. I already knew not to go to the Gulf states. Now they make Turkey fundamentalists. They've robbed Turkey of their free press and their democracy. So who wouldn't get arrested in
Funny,
Turkey?
it feels more fascist than fundamentalist. I know that he's much more religiously conservative than you guys have had, but still, this is a slow. These are fascist moves.
One of the preeminent journalists in the country just got arrested a couple of weeks ago. It might have even been last week. And he was thought like, wow, he's really famous. They're not going to arrest him. No, they did arrest him. That was after the election. And now he's gone. And you know what they called him? Terrorist. The word has no meaning anymore. So, Anna, there were real elections and there was a real press in Turkey. I mean, there was tons of disagreements. There was exchange of ideas. You could disagree and be right about criticism of the Turkish government overall, absolutely, right? But there was a Turkish government. There was a democracy. There was a parliament. There was a free press. Right now, it doesn't look like that anymore. Look at this. Look at what it's become. This is out. This is, God damn it, man. I mean, the fundamentalists have stolen so much from us. And if they stole this too, I don't know what the answer is. I just don't know. What do you do with this? Second largest army in NATO? What are you going to do with it?